Hey, everybody. I'm Rick Brusuelas. And welcome to the Thursday Checkdown. I'm here with Greg Kellogg over there. And we put together the Thursday Checkdown. First of all, before we get any much further, we need you to do us two favors. I want you to hit the like button. And also, if you're not already subscribing, please hit the subscribe button. So there's never an off season in fantasy football. And each week we are fortunate to have super guests that come on and talk to us about fantasy football, all aspects, all with the idea to make you, the fantasy football manager, better and more successful. But more than that, we also try to make this fun, because if it's not fun,
why do it?
Oh, I was waiting for that.
I missed my cue. Can you believe it?
You're right. But tonight, we are going to be talking individual defensive player, or IDP. And we're fortunate to have a great guest, one of the top IDP analysts, who is also with the Football Guys. And he's also the 2025 Kings Classic Dick Butkus champion. So we're really fortunate to have one of the top and hottest IDP analysts. But before we welcome Matt, let's go ahead and give a recap on highlights.
No. Let's bring Matt on, because he may want to say some things too.
Oh, sure. Okay. There you go. Hey, Matt.
Up, boys.
So, Matt, we were at the expo, and I'm changing the order entirely on Rick. He's totally dumbfounded because we've actually got a surprise for you, Rick. One of my highlights was Gina Noble. Matt, you know Gina, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She's a two-time Queen's Classic winner. She's known as the Queen of Fantasy Football. She's a sweet lady. And do you have a picture of her, Rick, that we can bring up and show the crowd?
It's actually showing right now.
Oh, it's on, yeah.
Spot her. She's looking off to the side, and she's wearing what looks like, I don't know, what is that on top of her head?
Well,
it's a crown.
It actually looks like a crown. Now, I'm just seeing the three of us. I'm not seeing the picture of Gina. Are you seeing that, Matt?
Yeah.
Oh, it must just me. I mean, then I'm not seeing it.
Technology.
Okay, well, anyway, if you look at this ring, it says GOAT on it, and it was gifted to me by Marcus Howard and his fiancee, Tara. They made the crown for Gina, too. And, Matt, you're a champion, so bring on Tara for me, because she's agreed to come on and talk to you, Matt. She's got something to say to you.
Hi, Tara.
Hey, Matt. Hey, so since you are the king, Matt, we are here to crown you the king of fantasy football.
Let's go.
Okay.
Let's go.
You know, afterwards, Matt, you have to send her an address so she can mail that to you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes,
I wasn't prepared for this at all. So I just happen to have this bad boy right here next to me in case this came up. Tara, that is so cool.
Matt.
I am so jealous of watching Gina walk around with that. Was so cool. And I was like, man, it would be sick to have a crown to put on the head.
Well, we're honored to finally
always
crown a king, okay? King.
Well,
Tara's
thank you
always
very
treated
much.
me well, and I talked to her today, and she told me she wanted to crown the king. And
Yes.
I said, well, we have the king coming on tonight.
Heck yeah.
So she offered to give you a crown.
Tara, you're the best. Thank you so much for this.
You earned
So now
it.
before we go to Rick and myself, Tara, first, give us your one highlight from the expo this year.
Oh my gosh. I think it's just being around everybody and really getting the chance to really talk to so many different people and meet and make new friends. I mean, that's such a highlight at the expo. Everybody's friendly. Everybody's there to have a good time. And it's a great place to network. And I mean, I loved it this year. It was such a wonderful vibe. I couldn't have been more happier.
All right, Matt, your turn. Same question.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to parrot a lot of what Tara just said, but it's really cool to meet people and network. You two specifically, I didn't know you outside of going to the expo. I mean, you see faces online, but the interaction, you can't really get to know somebody, but then spending time, whether it's drafting or just, having a cold one, whether it's a Coke or a Pepsi or maybe even a light beer, it's just fun to get to know people in an environment where everybody shares the same love. That's kind of what does it for me.
Well, I love it because I get to see all the people. That's my highlight. Rick, what's yours?
Well, I have to admit, I was pretty nervous because I was getting to draft against Matt and 12 other of the top IDP experts in the Kings Classic Dick Butkus division. The one that Matt was the champion last year. I keep telling him to keep fingerprints and make sure that's nice and shiny for when I get to take it home next year. But yeah, you're right. Getting a chance to see people that are people I look up to and have followed and watched on podcasts and Sirius XM and fantasy footballers. I mean, it's getting to see the really top names, but also seeing all the other people, some of which even watch our show, and getting a chance to share time with them. I also like the fact that there's a lot of charity involved, and seeing a lot of the people that have been running charity leagues or doing charity functions there at the expo. I mean, it makes me feel good to see all the good that people in the fantasy world do for their local community and also the larger community around us. So those were my highlights.
Okay, so to keep the show on target time-wise, we have to say goodbye to Tara. But Tara, before you go, tell people where they can find your stuff.
Well, you can find us at crownchancecompany.com, or you can find us on Facebook as well at Crowned Champs.
Thank you, Tara, so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tara.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me. And you're welcome, King. I can't wait to see you represent your crown at the expo next year.
Okay. Bye now. Okay.
All right. Now, were you expecting that?
No, what? That was super kind. I appreciate it a lot. I want to walk
really
around with a
hard
crown
to keep
on.
it a secret, and I forgot to call Rick to tell him what I was doing. He was trying to figure out why we were going to show a picture of Gina, and it was because I wanted to set up Tara.
No, that's awesome. It's so cool. You know what? It's about time that I got a crown on this. Let's be real. Come on.
Trust me, I'm going to crown you. That's for what is Tip saying? From what I heard, Matt is going back to back.
Man, Tip, your sources are locked in because I am going back to back.
Matt, no. I was invited to an IDP Experts League by Mike Pelton. I don't know IDP. I've played it before, but I'm not an expert by any means. So I hired next year's Kings Classic winner as my DC. Mace Riney is going to win this year because he started off the draft with the best player in the NFL.
I knew you were going to say that.
I saw Mace's draft picks because he was sitting right to my right, and no, you're that's not happening. I can tell you that. Oh, I love Mace and JC, because JC and Mace were actually teamed up on that draft as well. So Mace.
You're telling me JC screwed my DC's picks? Hey, listen, we got to get into what about Matthew Montgomery? We got to get into that. So, you're really an up and coming star. You're not a guy that's been around 20 years doing IDP like Gary Davenport, right? So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? You told us offline that you have a day job. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us a little bit about your family outside of fantasy football.
Well, I'm a Cincinnati. I lived there for about 27 years, most of my life to this point, and then moved to the Indianapolis area following a family business. I was in the restaurant world for many, many years, and now I got a customer service job at a packaging company, which is pretty cool. As far as why I kind of got into this, it's my Little League baseball coach was John Norton, who is the guru of IDP over at Football Guys. And over time, I played in fantasy leagues with him, when I was a kid. And then you grow up and he's like, hey, I've got a real, kind of competitive one. And I got into IDP and I didn't know anything at all, but I'd read all of John's stuff. So I just kind of followed the principles with which I learned through there. And then I just fell in love with the game as a true fan of it once I was old enough to kind of understand what was happening and kind of how to strategize. And there's no real formula to win. It's a lot of luck, but a lot of preparation can help you prepare for those shortcomings if there are. So I'm a pretty simple guy, man. The older I get, the more I like being on my porch, watching the world go by. I love a good mowed lawn. I don't know if you guys are King of the Hill fans, but Hank Hill once said, why would anyone do drugs when you could just mow a lawn? And that's exactly how I feel the older I get. I just enjoy the simple things, grilling out, hanging with my wife and child, and just watching the world go by and watching a ton of football.
You must love Daddy.
Where are you located?
You must love Ryan Kennedy bringing Addison to the expo.
Oh, man, that was so cool. She came over and held the belt. And then when she won a raffle or got given a belt, she came over to me and was like, hey, look, you can hold my belt. And hers was heavier and shinier than mine. And I was like, dang, all right, you've already upgraded the belt. So, yeah, no, seeing those two is exactly why the expo is such a cool thing, is because you can introduce fantasy football or you can high-level debate it. I mean, there is something for everyone if you appreciate what fantasy football is at this expo.
Yeah, and Matt, I'm seeing you in a Miami uniform and New Jersey, but I know it's because you like Waddle. So, where are you? But are you like a Dolphin fan? Are you from Miami or?
I am unfortunately at times a Cincinnati through and through fan. Right. The jersey thing, every year, my brother, my dad, and I get each other Christmas gifts of our favorite fantasy football player from the year prior. And we've had this tradition for about 15 years. So I have a very eclectic jersey collection in the closet behind me here. Everything from IDPs you barely know to some of the biggest stars that have helped carry us in all of our fantasy leagues. As far as like understanding why it's so hard to be a Bengals fan, you're given just enough hope to let it hurt you. Because it's never a hope where like the Bengals are a far and away the Super Bowl champions. But it's always a hope of, well, they can make a run. Oh, their offense is really good. They can beat anybody, any given. It's one of those. So it's painful. That Super Bowl run, though, I will never forget it till the day I die. It was something that I'll always love. And that's ultimately why I like football so much, is because it's just an emotional investment that I put into it.
Yeah, and we can talk later about, but Cincinnati should be better on the defensive side this year.
Oh, they will be. There is no should about it. And Shamar Stewart is okay. Everything is going exactly how
it's the hyperextension, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But how did Waddle become your favorite fantasy guy last year?
Well, I made a mid-season trade because I was really, really shaky at wide receiver in a league, and Waddle is one of those guys that I think always has a very volatile trade market. Sometimes people are going to ask for a lot because he has produced enough to warrant that price tag. But then there are times where it's easy to get down on him because he's always off the field. So I think he's an easier player to target because of that volatility. But I do think overall he stabilizes a position that at that time my roster really needed, and it helped propel me into a Super Bowl. And I didn't win it, unfortunately. But it was one of those things where that move is where the fortunes turned. So Jalen Waddle to me that season was one of those people.
Am I crazy?
You did tell us why you got into fantasy, but you didn't tell us why you got into content.
Yeah. So I'm a communicator, if you guys can't tell. I think communication is a skill just like anything else. And I'm a talker, boy. I will talk your ear off. So I've got a lot of practice in it. And I've watched sports content, listened to sports podcasts, TV, games, etc. I feel as though I know it. It's a matter of, am I comfortable enough to put it out there for the world? And for a while, it was one of those things where I was a very career-focused person, so it was very secondary. I still am that person, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I feel confident in my takes. I am still learning. That's what this game is. You have to learn who the players are and why they will be successful. But ultimately, if you know the game of football because you've watched it, you have a general understanding of what works. And to me, it was more about putting myself out there. Writing is a very hard thing to do because not only do you have to formatted a certain way, but you have to figure out SEO stuff. Video stuff is just, can you talk to the other person in front of you and not get nervous? And let me tell you, there are times I still get pretty nervous.
Yeah, me too.
Now you're with the football guys, and when did you join the football guys, and what's your primary coverage for them?
Yeah, so I joined Football Guys back in 2021, and I started off with just kind of quick hitter IDP pieces because it was something that Football Guys felt needed a greater investment, which was also around the time that Gary Davenport came in. And, it was one of those things where I got to be kind of a part of like the new, okay, how are we going to try to build this part of it? And in a very small scale, I wasn't building anything. I was more producing content, but John was the one who helped run the IDP department. So it was like, hey, I used to write articles for my leagues, and John was in those leagues and was like, hey, would you ever be interested in actually writing about this? And it ended up being something I fell in love with. And it's been 4 years now, 5 years. I can't remember it, but it's one of those things that I still look forward to because it's still fun. And it's fun because I genuinely try to put forth the effort into my work about conveying the thoughts I have about those players and try to be as respectful as possible, because let's be real, they're human beings. So understanding, okay, what could potentially be causing me to like this player or dislike this player? Is it his ability or is it his situation? And I like puzzles, and that to me is a big puzzle.
And you also you also work for other content organizations. Why don't you tell us some of those as well?
Yeah, so I do primarily video content for Dynasty Degens, which is on the Dynasty Rewind YouTube channel for Fantasy Nerd Boy, if you're familiar with his Twitter handle. And that's majority of where I've done, but I've done other stuff before. Leo McNeely, I've done some videos for in the past. I've done all kinds of podcast stuff with Tyler Bradley and Joe Frick and all the people that are kind of doing podcasts. I used to call myself a fledgling podcast guest. That was my fantasy football content title for a while. I just was the guy that kind of came on if you needed a spot, and really trying to get more into the video format this year with short form videos and quick hitters, just to try something different because I'm still learning this and I still want to be better at it.
Well, fair enough, but we've mentioned it. You won the Buckus division last year. That's enormous accomplishment.
Oh yeah. Well, let me be clear, man. It's the video stuff that I still am working on. Rick knows we are playing hard in the Kings Classic, and that is because we are all engaged in the fantasy football part of it. And let's not get it twisted, man. That is ultimately where the love is. I love constructing a lineup and trying to figure out who's going to outscore who with fractional points. That's what I really love.
And it's a 14-team league.
Yes.
It's not one of your little 8-team leagues where there's always free agents available.
No, it's genuinely probably the best I've ever done in a league, to be quite honest with you. I caught lightning in a bottle. I got Emeka Egbuka early when I was hurting at receiver, and he had that wonderful start to his career. Then right as he started tailing off, Will Anderson started coming into his own and had his all-pro best season he's ever had in a high-scoring, big play league, which really helped catapult me over the top, especially those last 2 weeks. And honestly, and Rick can attest to this, this is not a brag. I was the highest scoring team. I had the best record and I won it. And that is something that I take a lot of pride in because I genuinely put a lot of effort into that because it was my first year. And I wanted to prove that I belonged in that room because of the people that I watch on the podcast, the people that I see on the internet with good takes and that genuinely put forth the effort. So I was like, all right, the only way to win a league like this is to just try to do everything all at once. And it's a luck thing. I caught lightning in a bottle and I had some things go my way, but I like to think it's because I'm good. Rick, what do you think, man?
Yeah. And it's intimidating when I was in the Scott Fish Bowl and looking up from my computer screen, seeing Bob Harris sitting right across from me. Trust me, it's intimidating to know that, one of the, true greats. And here, this league, it's being run by Gary Davenport, the godfather of IDP. And as I mentioned, there are some real IDP experts. And the fact that you won, and was that your first year doing?
Yes.
And winning in your first year, that's pretty impressive. And so I would like to make sure that you know that there's 13 teams now gunning for you.
Oh, I wouldn't have it any other way, Rick. I'd rather be gunned for than gunning someone down.
Well, hey, wait a minute now. The draft is over. My partner can't change his strategy now. So tell us what strategy you employed to repeat.
Yeah, so like I said, a lot of what I felt did well in that league was I caught trends on the right side of them. I don't feel like you can replicate something like that. I do think that there's a lot of luck involved in that. So what I did was I tried to build my team around what the league rules were, and they specifically favored big plays. So what I would do is for every 2 or 3 big players that I would take, and big play players meaning the edge rushers, those people who aren't going to have 10 tackles, but they may have 3 and 2 of them are sacks. And that's a winning week in this league. If you have somebody that has multiple sacks, it is a mountain to climb. So what I would do was I went after guys at value that could potentially bring points to me that aren't going to be valued by other people. So for instance, I was really big on Cedric Gray. Now, Cedric Gray is not a big time player yet. He is an up and coming inside linebacker. But because of my strategy for the big play scoring guys, I wanted to make sure I had at least one guy at linebacker that I knew was going to get me those potential 8 to 10 tackle weeks. So it allowed me to take more risks on the big player guys if I can just kind of backfill the stability of my roster.
Where would LT have fit into your draft strategy? Would you have taken him in the first round?
Lawrence Taylor, LT, or LaDainian Tomlinson? Because honestly, I don't think either one would matter. You're taking both of them.
Either of them or both, yeah. But there, as I mentioned, there's 14 of the best IDP analysts playing in this league, and there's always a bit of gamesmanship going on going into, during, and even after a draft. Now, you created a bit of a buzz, and let's see if I can actually share this. I'm not very good with technology, but let's see. So here you are walking in wearing the, what's that? I think you were waving to us to remind us that you were coming into the room.
Well, that is Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that's about as good of an impression as you're going to get from me because I'm not slamming 2 beers into my face in my living room. So the whole point of it to me was I know the room full of people, and I'm going to keep the belt up while I do this part, all right, because I really want to lean into this because I meant this. I wanted the room is full of experts. It's full of really highly intelligent people, very analytical, very spreadsheet, OG.
Wait a minute. How can they be really intelligent if they're playing IDP?
Well, I think.
Sorry.
No, you're fair because you're right.
We have you as a guest, Greg. We're going to remove you.
I would call that more, the type of people that like to hurt themselves.
Oh, 100%. We're gluttons for punishment. That's exactly what it is. But it's more so the deep dive in order to enjoy IDP, I think, is really where you'll separate people that are just face value NFL fans and people who are truly diving into the game as a whole. And IDP, I wanted to go in there. And last year, I was the guy that kind of just was quiet, walk around, be very respectful because maybe it's like a imposter syndrome thing, but I felt like, man, do I need to be in here? When you walk in anywhere with a belt, and that includes the NFL Hall of Fame, when I walked in, there was no security saying, hey, can I see your ticket? Who are you here for? They just pointed me to the little hallway and they said, you walk there. And then they had 2 people follow me halfway down the hall. I felt like Goldberg in the late 90s. It was one of those things where I'm going to bring that energy to the room because I want everybody to know that it is a big deal playing this type of game, grinding a draft for 4.5 hours, and then winning it. So you should be proud. Now, I like to go a little overboard, okay? But who doesn't like a professional wrestling heel? So that's the last time you're going to see the belt because I'll bring 2 next year, Rick. I promise you.
And a crown. And a crown.
And a crown now. Heck yeah.
And just for those who aren't aware, the Kings Classics drafts are done in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And it is a 14-team league, not 18. If I said 18, I misspoke.
So, and Greg, the next one's yours. I was walking all around.
Sorry, I was distracted, I went back to the small screen because all I see are our pictures. I was trying to get back to where I could see what everybody else sees. But you got to tell me where I'm at now.
Yeah, the football guys, just before segment 4.
Segment 4?
Yeah, just before segment 4.
Oh, the last one. Okay. Oh, about the football guy staff. Yeah, football guy staff is legendary. Joe Bryant and I go way back. I mean, we formed Fanex together way back in the 90s, so we know each other really well, and he hires very good people. So of all the analysts at Football Guys, is there one that stands out to you as a mentor type or somebody that you really trust?
I trust everyone, like, wholeheartedly. It's honestly a great.
Even that major guy, that Tip major guy,
even Tip. You know what? Tip's one of those guys where he's the type of guy to check in on you. He's the friend that says, "Hey, what's up, man? Everything going well? Just check in every few weeks." So no, that's the type of energy the whole company has, though. Everybody is just this is a very competitive industry, and it's especially competitive internally. You know, who doesn't want to be the top guy in anywhere they're going? But the competitiveness is, there's never an edge at Football Guys. It's a genuine community where it's like, I want to be the best, but I'm going to try to help everyone maximize the potential. It's iron sharpening iron, right? But the mentor would be John Norton. He got me into this. My dad was a former football guy briefly, so he was also in it as well. And I've been playing fantasy football. He's the true reason that I am a fantasy football fan to the level that I am. So as far as mentors in this space, it'd be my father and John Norton specifically, but everyone at Football Guys is wonderful.
How much time do you spend in the forums? Because for me, back in the 90s, the forums is what was Football Guys.
Yeah, no, the forums, we have to go in there, check it out every now and again. I'm not a big forum guy. I'm more of a social media guy, but that's kind of how I came up in the space as a fan of football. So I like to engage in the social media part of it. I'm learning Discord more, which Football Guys has a Discord. I've done a lot of things on there. I've done AMAs on Reddit and Discord stuff. So anywhere that you can talk football, whether it's in print media, text, or video, I am probably lurking somewhere if somebody's talking about IDP.
Well, ask your dad about Usenet, because when we started, it was rec.sport.football.fantasy that got us all involved.
Wow. A lot of dots.
But it was actually kind of cool because it was a little bit counterculture too. I mean, there was a lot. It was a place you could go. You know, there were news groups that were about mountain biking or road cycling or football, basketball, baseball. But it almost like you almost had to have like a secret code to be able to get into there. And then once you were in, there were a lot of people that were like, you know, the big names of the rec.sports.
And that's why I think the King's Classic meant a lot to me, is a similar vein where it's like you needed the password to get in, right? It was like I had watched it from afar for 3 years or so. And I was like, oh, man, I would love to be in a league that serious. I've never had a full live. That's the first time I've ever done a full live IDP draft, was last year when it was 4.5 hours. And it was awesome. And I remember thinking, I cannot wait to come back confident, because I wasn't as confident as I should have been that first year. And that's why you saw the personality, the real deal, Rick. And you got to sit right next to me. So you got to hear probably some of the stuff I was muttering under my breath, too, that I didn't want people to hear.
Yeah, well,
hey, we're ahead of time. We've got some time to spend, so we're going to go off script a little bit here.
Go for it.
Talk about the King's Classic. I mean, you said it's something that you really wanted to do. You know, of the competitors in there, you saw the draft, and I want to tout the TSA because they sponsor this for us. TSA had 3 teams in the King's Classic this year. The IDP division. That's pretty dang good in my mind.
Well represented.
Of the guys there, now I know Gary's been around forever. I know Jorge and Steve are really well respected. Of all the 14 teams, and I'm just now getting to know Gladys, okay? We're going to have her on the show later. But I gotta ask you, which team which 2 teams scare you the most at taking your crown?
That's tough. I look more at fantasy managers than I do the players, because I do think the players will up and down. My draft day roster and my last game of the year roster, whether it's an undefeated season or a completely defeated season, is going to be different. So I'm looking at the people like, who do I think will outstrap me? Who's going to go after the guys I like? Rick, I will say you were one of those people that I didn't know very well going into this situation, and the prep was intimidating because I showed up with an iPad. All right. Rick's showing up. He's got bags. He's got pencils, pens, highlighters. He's got the spread. I mean, it was just one of those things where I was like, dude, am I underprepared? And people like that scare me because later in the season, all of that prep, that's when that matters. It doesn't matter week 1. It matters week 7 or 8 when you're on the cusp of, are you good or are you bad? So managers like that. And then Gary's the commissioner. Who doesn't want to shove it in the commissioner's face? I beat Gary in the Super Bowl, and he was the commissioner of the league. It was the first time I really got to interact with him outside of a football guy setting. So getting to play him that final weekend was one of those I'll never forget. It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
one of my favorite pictures is of Rick, because Gary gave everybody a gift, and I love the trophy Rick got. We're not going to show the picture, but just suffice it to say it was a nice little trophy, and on it said "loser."
and it's on a throne, or it's a throne of sorts, I guess, in the non-religious or non-regal form of throne. So you can imagine what the thing looked like. One of the things, and you mentioned it's a long draft. It's like 4.5 hours. And we were only allocated 1 minute and 15 seconds per pick. So yeah, there were a lot of draft picks in this league. There's 34 rounds, and by the end, we're kind of like, I think we're all getting kind of punchy about, we're going to draft a high schooler, and maybe we're so deep in the draft, or some guys that may have played in intramural sports.
Well, one of my favorite things about IDP, when it gets to something like that, would you rather have your 7th running back, or would you rather have a 3rd linebacker? To me, that's where the drafts are fun, is because while the player pool is shallow, late in drafts, no matter what, when you're in an IDP league, the meat of the draft is bigger. So there is more of a fun towards the end, of course. After 4.5 hours, you're dragging. But I think that initial excitement of the draft lasts longer because the player pool is so vast with stars and people who can actually turn weeks.
And one of the other things that was, I thought impressive was that, again, I think there was one timeout, and I think it was Steve, and I think maybe he was, maybe doing a bio break at the time, but, 14 drafters, 34 rounds, and only one timeout. So people really do their stuff. And, it didn't seem 4.5 hours, but it was a pretty long draft.
Right. It goes fast.
Now, there's a guy that wears bunny ears.
The IDP Easter bunny.
At the expo. And people may have heard of the IDP Godfather, but I've known the guy for 30 years. Who is better dressed at the expo than Gary Davenport?
I don't think there's anyone. And I think, you know what? I'm okay with that.
Oh, you're not getting a velour suit with a top hat yourself?
I think that he has the look for that. I think if I put that on, people are like, something's wrong with him. Somebody needs to check on him. But if Gary puts it on, it fits, man. He looks suave.
And I guess, and I didn't stay for the karaoke, but he sang a karaoke song, and it was like,
it was Metallica.
I was pretty impressed. He got a growly voice, and he was really but Gary is one of a kind, and he runs the thing, so it was a lot of effort must go into the planning and the execution of a draft that big. But we're gonna have fun because as you know, you don't win or lose your league on the day of the draft. There's a lot of things that go on. I think there are trades in the league, but there's definitely free agents.
The greatest part of every fantasy football season, in my opinion, is the 10 minutes before your draft, because You're so excited. The opportunities are endless. Everybody is undefeated. Everybody's going to beat everybody. And then when that draft starts, throw your plan out the window because it moves fast. And if you're not keeping up, you will get left behind.
Well, one approach I tried to take, at least in this particular draft, was, and much like you said, you want to get big plays. There's so many great IDPers that you're really shooting for big plays. So I think I started off some running back, Bijan, something or other. But then I went IDP my next 3 picks. I took Hutchinson, I took Max Crosby. So that's 2
big play,
impact defensive ends. And then I got Roquan Smith, who was kind of surprised he was still there because he might be linebacker 1 or 2.
I love him, and I just didn't. He just fell. He just fell past me. I just should have. I feel bad. I feel regret not taking him. What up, Jamie? I love Jamie. I appreciate you stopping by.
Well, speaking of Jamie, I'm an idiot. I saw Jamie at the expo. That's who I was trying to think of earlier, Rick. I saw Jamie at the expo, and I didn't recognize the name, and he's in our chat every single week. He's
Jamie
one of our
rules,
regulars. Man. Jamie, my apologizes, my man. I will buy you dinner next year.
Ooh.
What about me? Dinner?
I might buy you dinner too. I bought tip dinner this year, so I can afford. I can
should have made
McDonald's
tip pay double.
Too.
Well, we've been talking a lot about the Kings Classic, and it's an IDP. It also involves offense players, as you could tell by, running back Bijan Robinson in the draft. But we really wanted to be able to also talk to you about IDP, especially for those people who are perhaps new or uncomfortable with the idea of playing IDP. And there was
it's my question first, thank God.
Oh, go for it.
Explain to the people. I mean, we've said individual defensive players, but explain exactly what it means. Does that mean you can start 15 linebackers and skip all the linemen? I mean, what is IDP and why is it important to fantasy football?
The beauty and the burden of IDP is that there is no real template for what it is. I believe that it's one of those things where if you overdo it early, there's a high likelihood that you will be turned off because it can be overwhelming. So I always encourage people that if you are going to tiptoe your foot into the IDP waters, to start small and work your way up. It's individualized.
Explain start small.
Yeah, so it's individualized positions. You usually have 3 main position groups: your defensive line, your linebackers, and your defensive backs. So that kind of compartmentalizes all of the players into 3 positions. So you don't have to know who the safeties are, who the corners are. You can kind of lump them all into, do they play in the secondary? Are they linebackers, or is their hand in the ground? So then from there, just put it up to your league. Do you want to go, hey, let's have 1 at each position? Do you want to go all flexes and make it to where you can just pick any defensive player that you want to see play? I think that you have to start simple before you make it complex, because it will get statty and it will get analytical the more that you integrate it into your league. But if you start small, the learning curve can be adjusted for everybody, and then it's more engaging because then the next year people will pine for more.
Well, let me ask you a quick question before Rick gets his in. As a guy that studies football, I know that in the modern football, it's not like the old 4-3 everywhere. You now have 3-4, you have 5-2, you have all types of hybrid rosters. But a lot of the edge rushers don't put their hand in the ground. Are they outside linebackers or are they defensive ends? How do you know?
So this is a big buzz that kind of got solved a year or 2 ago, where they started implementing what they called true position. And I was lucky. Rick will appreciate this as an IDP guy. I was lucky to understand that quicker than my league mates and how that affected value. So basically, it's like what you said, Greg. There are guys that don't put their hand on the ground traditionally anymore like they did, but they are constantly rushing off the edge. That is primarily what they do. They used to be coded as outside linebackers. If you're a linebacker guy in IDP, you want those guys inside that have the tackle volume. You don't want to rely your linebacker position on somebody that is going to have a low tackle floor. And that is what outside linebackers that should have been coded differently were doing. They were providing sacks, but they didn't have a tackle floor that you could start comfortably. When true position came around, those players began to get coded as edge or DE. So you got to utilize those same players at a true position, and then you got to assess their true value based on your roster. So, like I said, you can get analytical like that in IDP, but essentially they made a change a couple of years ago, and we're just now kind of coming out of like okay, who is what? We kind of know now where each player is playing. And I think that has also been a challenge for IDP, is because things like that change often. And if you don't have consistency, it's hard to build a plan. It's hard to have fun, quite frankly.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing is to have fun. One of the things that we've already talked about, or you already gave a good suggestion on how to encourage new people to IDP to try IDP. I guess the other thing I like to point out is that to watch or to play football, there's an offense side and a defense side, but if you play IDP, you get to watch and get in play both sides of the ball. And so it's more fun when you get to think about, I think, non-IDP football can get kind of stale because, yes, you're always going after the same running backs. You're always going against the same, or going for the same wide receivers, and opening it up to all the defensive players then opens your world up to more players to be able to, follow and watch and root for. So I love the fact that, getting a chance to play IDP. And like you said, my first IDP league, we had 4 flex IDP positions.
Okay, yeah, cool.
And that was an easy way to get into it. And now it's more and more fun as you start saying, well, I'm in a league that requires defensive tackles. I'm in a league that requires cornerbacks.
To tell you the truth, I'm waiting for the league where you have to use true positions. You got to start a center, a guard, a left guard. I'm that kind of nut.
Get the real sickos involved, Greg. I love that.
That's right.
Another real simple way to encourage people to try out IDP and what players to go after, and perhaps you could kind of give your advice on what you like to go after early on, is the closer the player is to the middle of the line of scrimmage, the more opportunities they're going to have for tackles and other plays. So like, for example, and I'll use a phrase, box safety, as opposed to a free safety. The free safety is way in the back, and they're the last line of defense on long passes, it seems. But the box safety is right up there at the line of scrimmage. So they have a chance for a tackle, they have a chance for a sack, and they have a chance for a interception. So I love, I know this is going against traditional thought, is I love safeties. I will go after safeties much early in the draft. And I did. I went after, Tyke Smith. I went after Derwin James. Yep. And I think I even grabbed a third safety just because I like safeties.
I love them, man.
So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, your thoughts on play positions you tend to target?
Yeah, I always go back to league rules, right? That's the easiest thing to say. Just understand what scores you points and then find the value there. But as far as like everything remaining equal, I like to play fantasy football, whether it's dynasty or redraft, kind of like it's a baseball season. The first 3 weeks, the second 3 weeks, and then the final 3 weeks. And I try to play those series, and that's not only to make sure that I'm staying involved and I'm understanding that, okay, I like this player. Let's see how the trend continues. Or maybe I don't like a player, but it's too early to cut them or to make a trade potentially. So I like to see foundations. I like to build with the base, start with the cement and then put the roof on the house after it's been built. Don't start with the roof and then the driveway and then add a bathroom, right? There's a way to build this effectively so that it's strong. And in IDP, that is a tackle floor foundation. Tackle is the name of the game. It's the rushing yards of defensive fantasy football. Linebackers are running backs, and you've got to understand that the edge rushers are wide receivers and the safeties and the corners are kind of like quarterbacks. But, it's a different type of scale, but if you're going to compare, that's kind of what you're seeing. The linebackers are going to carry your team. They're the engine. They're the high-volume stat guys. The edge rushers, they may be like those 6-catch, 60-yard wide receivers that get a touchdown. Well, to them, that's just 3 tackles, a sack, and maybe they fell on a football. That's how you have to see it. So I like to build the points that I know are there. Easy, actionable, something that you can follow a trend on. And tackle numbers are about as effective, and snap counts. Snap counts are key to any IDP fantasy football.
So would somebody like Mike Singletary be better than a Lawrence Taylor?
I think Lawrence Taylor's a bad example there because I think Lawrence Taylor had enough of the big plays that none of the other stuff mattered, in my opinion. But I do think that either one of them is a great to have in IDP. But yeah, Lawrence Taylor, I think, is in a class of his own. He could do everything.
Well, talking about current players then, Detroit fan, I love Aiden Hutchinson. I really do. Would you value, say, Jack Campbell over Aiden Hutchinson?
Ooh, that is actually a very good question. I've never been asked that. I don't know if I've sat there and, man, that I might have to talk out of both sides of my mouth here because to me, I was late on Campbell, so maybe this is like me not willing to admit I was wrong or something. But I think I would go Hutchinson because I do think that he is like a once-in-a-class pass rusher, and I think you'll find a Jack Campbell every year. I think that
basically you're saying that Rick had a great draft when he got Hutchinson.
Oh yeah, 100%. I love Hutchinson. I love Crosby. And
that's all he wanted to do is get his
Roquan and Derwin James. It was like watching him draft my dream team. Honestly,
well, I'm still waiting for Detroit to sign Max Crosby so we can pair him up.
Yeah, for real.
They got Derek Moore.
That's not for fantasy. That's just for NFL.
Amen. I'm so happy he's not in the AFC North and that Ravens trade fell through. I am so happy as a Bengals fan.
Detroit had a good draft, and they drafted Derek Moore, who is going to be.
Where'd he go? Wait, where'd he go to school?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Michigan Junior College. Is that
go blue, baby? Go blue.
So, we kind of talked about, like players we like to target or positions we like to target. Are there specific stats or, what sources how do you prep for a draft like the Kings Classic?
Well, prepping for the draft like Kings Classic and managing a league to me are completely different because when I'm going into a draft, I'm kind of wish casting. I'm kind of hoping. I'm looking at the trends that I believe favor my point the best. And maybe that's not the best way to type of an analysis, but I also think that you can go into that and prove yourself wrong. So I always go in with a take. This player's bad, and then I try to disprove it. Is there a way that I can disprove it? So when I'm prepping for a draft, I have my guys. We've all got our guys, all right? Some people bring the magazine and they highlight their guys. I'm sitting there and my queue is full the entire draft because I'm looking and I'm constantly moving the value in my queue based on what I have done in the previous rounds because there are also going to be players that fall. And I love a player that falls to me, but it also makes me nervous because I'm like, all right, why doesn't everyone like this player like I do? As far as managing in season, snap counts is the most critical stat, I believe, in all of IDP. And I use Football Guys snap counts tool every week when I'm prepping for an article, when I'm setting a lineup, because IDP can be fool's gold. A lot of people don't know some of the big names for IDP that happen that will carry you that you'll never see again. A perfect example of this was 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I can't remember. There was a linebacker in Jacksonville by the name of Donald James. Donald James got cut after this season, and he was the XFL MVP the following year. But the season that he was in the NFL, he started for 5 weeks because they had a linebacker get hurt, and he had double-digit tackles through the fantasy playoffs. And if you were not watching snap counts, nobody would have saw him. He was free on waivers, and you got to pick him up and ride him through the fantasy playoffs. So if you're looking at who is getting on the field and why, you will be able to manage your lineup effectively, and that's ultimately the name of the game in IDP.
I want to know why he didn't stick.
One of the reasons why Max Crosby is so, valuable is that when he's on the field all the time.
Yep. And an edge rusher, that's hard.
And that's hard as an edge rusher. But so he's getting a lot of tackles in addition to the sacks.
Exactly. And that's why I build it like that, honestly.
And for an edge rusher, do you also look for things like, do you value, or do you look at sacks, or do you look at pressures, or is one more useful for your analysis?
Here's a hot take. People don't like this, but I firmly believe it. I think pressures are the most overrated thing in the world. I think that if you're getting almost stats and they're giving you points, that you need to be in a more competitive league, because a lot of those pressures are quarterbacks getting scared. And if I've got Myles Garrett running at me, I don't care how professional I am going to be a scared human being. So I just think almost stats aren't real stats. Did the guy get on the ground? Maybe in a contract negotiation, pressure rate is amazing because, hey, I am making this quarterback think differently. But in fantasy football, get him on the ground. That's what I care about.
So you wouldn't give points for like a point per reception, a half point per drop because he almost caught it?
No, yeah, right. I think pass interference, cool catches should be 10 points.
Hey, listen, you mentioned something earlier that I want to hit on because I don't think a lot of people understand this concept. You get the imposter syndrome where you're clearly an expert because you won an experts league with 13 other of the best players in the world. Okay. I'm in the Hall of Fame. I still don't know why I'm in the Hall of Fame.
Heck yeah.
People come up to me thinking I know the answers, like I have some type of inside source to what's going to happen.
Right.
I give my best analysis. I'll tell them the truth, but my analysis is no better than anybody that plays it, and understands the game.
Exactly.
So imposter syndrome, does it surprise you how many people come up to you and expect you to absolutely be right all the time?
Yeah, I can assure you I am not right all of the time. But I will say the imposter syndrome thing was more last year. And it was because it was the first time I came out of as a creator. I'm going to put my face behind the takes now. And I was a written word guy on Football Guy's website. So that to me was that was me towing the water for that. And so this year,
podcast was more enlightening to you than writing?
Well, not necessarily. It's not as stimulating in a way. That means, and that's not talking any crap to you guys, but I think with writing, it forces you to be analytical. Whereas I view podcasting as more conversational. I want to understand your point. I want to understand your take. I may not agree with it, but I want to get to the why behind it, because who knows, I might pick up a nugget that'll help me in my research. And I don't blame anybody if you pray to rocks every night and they give you your lineup on Sundays and it works for you, then maybe I'm going to pick up some rocks and I might try to do a little something different. But I think to me this year was weird because it was the first time people actually started doing that. Where people
I wanted to touch back on a question that Greg asked, and it was actually teased us up perfectly. So it was a great question about the Campbell versus Hutchinson question. So when you're looking at defensive linemen, especially defensive end or edge rushers, versus linebacker, there's an argument. Well, people should be drafting and loading up on linebackers because they are the more constant source of tackles. Okay. And then there's the other argument where there's a positional scarcity of truly elite edge rushers. So where would you pick linebackers? Where would you be picking edge rushers?
So linebackers, to me, I would say I go with them first because it's like when you're trying to predict sacks, it's a lot like predicting touchdowns. Obviously, sacks, you're going to get higher into you're going to get more in the double digits than you are with touchdowns. But when you're prepping for a fantasy draft on offense, you're not going to go, okay, well, Devontae Adams led the league in touchdown catches last year, right? He's going to do that again. Yeah. Is he? Whereas Myles Garrett, he led the league in sacks and broke the record. He very well could do that.
He's not getting 23 again.
No, he's not getting 23. But as far as leading the league, that is a possibility. So it's a little bit easier to track stats or sacks specifically for a trend, but that it's still volatile. There's still going to be ups and downs with that. Tackles, you rarely see a linebacker, an elite linebacker, go from number 1 to number 50. Zaire Franklin is a very rare example where that happened last year. And that was one of those. He was the first IDP player off the board in that draft of last year's Kings Classic, and he was awful. There was no other way to put it as far as for IDP production. So that rarely happens, but it does happen. It just shows you the luck factor in all this. But I think that tackles, you might see him go from 120 to 105. And while that's not good, it's regression. You're still getting that volume, that safe floor that didn't lose you weeks. It may not have won them, but you didn't lose because of them.
But your strong safeties get a lot of tackles usually. So let me ask you this, building on Rick's question, for the first time somebody told me, and I think it was Mace, that you take DBs late because there's so many of them. Why would you take, say, a defensive end that's not an elite sack master over, say, or even a middling linebacker over a strong safety like a Brian Branch or somebody like that?
Well, it goes back to what I was saying about Rick and some of the managers that I scared to face, is because I think Mace's opinion is very mainstream with that, where people are like, hey, they're a dime a dozen, you can wait. I get that. There is a higher volume, but if there's a higher volume, I also think there's a higher chance to hit a gem. And I think that if you're waiting for that gem to fall to you as opposed to trying to scout it out and get it before everybody else, that's where you separate in drafts. And that's what, when Rick said, I almost picked up a third safety. Well, the two you picked up were great. So you've got Tyke Smith, who's kind of like that high upside guy, but if that doesn't pan out for whatever reason, I keep waiting on Tyke too, man. I think he's awesome. But if it doesn't, he's got Derwin James, who's a no doubt starter every week on any other team. So I think that position is arguably the most athletic on a football field. They are forced to cover the pass. They have to be good enough to cover the pass. They have to be strong enough to stop the run, and they have to be very moldable. They play a lot of different positions, and they cover a lot of ground on the field. Those are very, very good athletes, and I think they are highly undervalued in IDP.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end, so I'm going to jump ahead of Rick for one quick question. For new IDP guys, what round do you normally start taking IDP players?
4 is usually where I begin to look, unless there's like a scoring setting that's ridiculous, you know what I mean? Like where you got to get sacks. But 4th round is usually pretty safe. You get the first, in a 12-team league, you get the first 36 players are offense. And those are the ones that really move the needle in fantasy football, even in IDP. But when you get to that round, you can get IDP guys that will mix perfectly with your roster construction, whether you've got a high upside wide receiver. Well, now you need stable linebackers because you can't afford to take high upside on everyone and not true value. So 4th round for me seems pretty fair, but I don't blame anybody for going IDP early, especially in those big leagues.
Rick, you got the last question. What is it?
Yeah, and we've named a few players that we've had in drafts or that we tend to look for. But so why don't you kind of go through your list of who are your favorites to target? I
want to know about Jihad Campbell.
I love Jihad Campbell. I actually wrote a piece on Football Guys about him being a breakout player this year. I think he has a really, really good opportunity. We saw him perform really well early last season when they were down without Nakobe Dean. His contract as a rookie comes up the exact time that Zach Bond's contract runs out there. Zach Bond will be in his early 30s and Jihad Campbell will be 25. So I think as a dynasty guy, he is a no doubt, keep him on your roster. I don't care what's going on. But I think in redraft leagues, he has a real opportunity to ascend into the top 15, top 10 linebackers based on just solely him being in a defense that we've seen produce 2 high-level linebackers in multiple seasons with not a lot of change.
Yeah, I tell you, Howie Roseman is just awesome at, drafting not for this year, but for a year or two down the road. And he's always then refueling that, especially on the defensive side. He did that with defensive backs. He did that again with Jihad Campbell.
Yep.
And that's one reason why the Eagles are consistently very good. So your favorite defensive lineman that you target?
Favorite D lineman right now is Chop Robinson. I'm also I wrote about him. he had a really good camp buzz today too, as well, forcing a fumble. He put on a lot of weight this offseason, and a lot of that was because he was a liability in the run game last year. This year, he's going to be tasked with a lot more because they are down now both Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. So he is edge one by default, and Miami did not sign anybody of note at that position. So I believe that he, if anything, the volume is going to be there. He's always had the talent. He was the best edge rusher, arguably, of his draft class out of Penn State. So I believe that we're finally now going to see him produce, at least in the volume that we expect from a first-round pick, and him taking it serious, putting on that muscle and working on the run game and getting a lot of buzz at camp early in that run defense.
Now, see, the Penn Stater that I'm targeting late in drafts is Nick Singleton, but I'm an offensive guy.
He's great.
Listen, we're at the end of the hour, and I don't want to hold you over too much because you got to have time for your family. But thanks for coming on, Matt. I really appreciate it. I want to get you on during the regular season for our Pros versus Joes segment. That's only a quick 15-minute segment. But before we let you go, tell everybody again, remind them where they can find your work.
Yeah, so please get on my X and follow at Matt Monty FF. I was hacked back in January and lost an account. And I'm not really bummed about the follower loss. That's whatever. Half of it was bots anyway, right? But I'm more worried about the contacts that I lost from that account. So please follow me on X at Matt Monty FF. I write for Football Guys IDP. I'm going to be doing 2 articles in season this year. Currently putting out some quick hitter articles, 1,000 words plus on players I like, players I dislike. I'm covering training camp for the Miami Dolphins, for the Vikings, for the Raiders, and for the Colts this year for Football Guys, and that is all before the season. So
Are you going to Colts training camp so you can see it in person?
Dude, I don't know how to get credentialed. I've been barking up every tree I know.
I'll tell you how. Call the PR department.
Heck yeah. There you go.
It's an open number. Find the number for the PR department for the Colts and call them. I literally had press credentials for the Atlanta Falcons the year they went to the Super Bowl just because I called and asked.
Wow.
Cool. I was nobody. I mean, I was a computer guy. But I was doing fantasy football, and I told them who I was writing for, and they gave me press credentials.
Wow. Okay, I'll keep that in mind, man.
Just call them and find out. Hey, listen, thanks again for coming on. Hey, Rick, who do we got next week?
I think it's a author of the FFPAPI, Ruperto Delora.
Oh, cool. So we hope you'll join us. But in the meantime, like, subscribe, and we really appreciate the people that come every week and comment. James and Jamie, you guys are great. You're there every week, and we'd love to grow the audience. And again, we bring champions to you. And we're going to bring him during the regular season when he can help you win.
Just make sure it's no fingerprints.
Oh, I'll keep it nice and shined up for you, Rick, so you can see me wear it next year.
Thank you very much. And thanks, everyone, for watching and supporting the show. Like Greg said, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.
And Pug is right. Let's get ready for some football. Take us home.